Welcome to The Anxious Voyage. If you think that title sounds bleak or foreboding, one of two things must be true. You're very lucky, or you need to get out more. On this program, we share stories of life and living. We compare notes. We discover commonalities. We accept that life is a glorious, heartbreaking thing, and we embrace and celebrate all of it. Take the ride with us. We're glad you're here. Now, here's your host, Mark O'Brien.
Hello again and welcome. As always, we're coming to you from world headquarters in Middletown, Connecticut, the birthplace, as most of you probably already know, of Ignaz Gvorts, who was the inventor of Nerf curb feelers. I actually had to have a conversation with my wife about that to see if anybody would remember curb feelers. I am really happy to welcome my guest today, Kris Bryant. Kris, I'm very glad you're here, and I'm glad you had the courage to show up.
Well, most people probably think that they're going to hear something from a baseball player, a third baseman by the name of Kris Bryant, who plays for the Colorado Rockies. But instead, you've got me.
Okay, well, I think I can get through it if you can.
Okay.
I don't know.
Game.
I don't know how you're going to feel about this, but it occurred to me actually this morning that I have known you half my life. That's pretty incredible. It never dawned on me before.
That's a long time. Yeah.
It is a long time. And I'm going to guess it may actually be more than half of your life.
Well, do you remember what year? Because I don't remember what year it was.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to guess it was probably maybe around 1990.
I think, yeah, you're right. My daughter was born in 86. So that's about right. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know that. My son Quinn, my second son, was born in 86.
Yep. See, there you go.
Wow.
I won't tell you if it's half my life or not. You'll just have to guess, I guess.
I wouldn't expect you to. When we were first talking about the show, you sent me a text message. I'm sorry, an email, and you said, I have lots of lessons learned and stories. So maybe the most innocuous way to get into that is, after neither one of us, and for the sake of our audience, I should say, we met when we both worked at what was then called The Travelers Insurance Company. They
don't forget the.
Yeah, they chopped the. And so after we both left there, I know very little about what happened to you and where you went. And so what was your professional life like?
Oh, well, I was almost turning 30, and so it was legitimate back then for a 30-year-old female in New England to become a salesperson and have some credibility. So off I went to Dun & Bradstreet, where I started selling portfolio accounting software to big banks and portfolio managers, insurance companies alike.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was fun because I could run my own territory. You know, it's my first opportunity to kind of run a business. So
was it what you expected? And I'm asking you that question because I can't imagine myself. I guess I want to put it this way. I can't imagine myself having to sell. I mean, obviously my business is 20 years old. I've been selling, but that's not how I look at it. I just share what I do. That's how I look at it. Was that challenging?
No, my first sales job was, the lemonade stand on the corner of Hammock Road and Windy Hill Road in Westbrook, Connecticut.
Wow.
I've always been interested in sales. I did, as a kid, I did door-to-door sales of you name it. I would go knock just by myself, because you could back then, right? Knock on the door and sell, some elderly lady some flower seeds or something. I just was into it, and I loved talking to people and asking questions and eventually solving problems once I got to the point where I could understand what the problem was. But with lemonade, it's just a thirst issue.
I
So
was going to say that. And I'm going to guess that was in the days before you would be required as a little kid to have a permit to sell lemonade. How crazy is that?
yeah, yeah. And your mom would say, yeah, go.
Yeah.
And you'd get
Um,
on your bike and go down the road. So
um, maybe the closest thing I came to selling was having a paper route, but I made sure I was done with that before the sun came up. So, I'd have to go collect on Saturdays, but the people knew they already owed me the money because they already had the
yeah.
product.
Well, I was just definitely coin operated even back then. My parents were divorced. My mom was trying to support a house and a couple of kids and working three jobs. So
Wow.
asking her for money was not going to end up successful. So I had to do my own thing. And babysitting back then ugh, it wasn't attractive to me, and you only made $1 an hour.
Yeah.
So I
Uh,
felt like
my
selling was better.
my first official job, and I suppose you could call this sales, was working at McDonald's when I was
Ah,
16. I made all of $1.60 an hour.
yeah.
Wow. You
Yeah.
know, you just mentioned that you grew up in Westbrook, and I think I may have mentioned to you at one point that I lived there for a while.
Yeah.
So,
Which I
I don't
didn't
mean,
know, by the way, because it's such a little small town.
yeah, I was there from, I want to say 2006,
Okay.
uh, yeah, 2006 to, I think I finally sold my house in 2013,
Ah, okay.
which I think we talked about this too. As the crow flies was actually pretty close behind the high school and middle school.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure where it was. So that's the
Yeah,
high school I went to.
yeah, I knew that. So here's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Knowing what kind of community Westbrook, I guess, still is, what, if you don't mind sharing, what three jobs could your mom have worked?
So my mom worked at R.R. Donnelly's, which was a publishing company with a production plant in Old
Old
Saybrook.
Saybrook, yeah.
And for the most part, she worked the midnight shift, um, from like 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. She would come home, sleep for 2 hours, go work at Friendly's in Saybrook, schlepping ice cream.
Yep.
And then on the weekends, her and I was about 6 then, and my little sister was 4. We would go clean offices in Essex on Saturdays and Sundays.
So when your mom was working, were you at home alone?
No, we always had some kind of she would make a deal with someone they could use a bedroom and a bathroom on the ground floor of our house in exchange for making sure they were there by 11 p.m. every night.
Wow.
And the bus picked us up at the end of the driveway, so that was no big deal. So we always had some kind of live-in something.
Um, I want to connect that back to what you said about your sales job. Do you think that experience with your mom, I would imagine, as an example, made you more enterprising?
Oh yeah, God, yeah. Because
Wow.
that was my model, was you like work really hard and you can make things come together, even though it wasn't likely. She had months where the $100 mortgage was tough, and we broke into our piggy banks, and everybody helped out however you could. Um, so yeah, I think it makes you want to be your own boss. It makes you want to work hard and help other people if you can.
Um, I'm asking the question I'm about to ask because I'm thinking about my sons. So I
Yeah.
know how old your daughter is. What does she do?
Well, she's a full-time mom, and she also is an eBay seller,
Okay.
which, if you're familiar with the craze around sneakers, she buys sneakers and, for $150 and she sells them for 600, so
Oh yeah.
it's an
Well,
amazing business. So, and it's one you can do anytime. So,
and I ask because, my desk is wood, I'm gonna knock on it. Both of my sons are really quite enterprising. Um, and I'm just, I'm grateful every day for that because I mean, I know some of their peers who aren't. Um, and as close as some of them get to enterprising is selling drugs, which my sons don't do. But on the subject of sneakers, my older son Sean and his wife and two kids live in Wake Forest now. And
oh, okay.
when they were buying their first house in a suburb of Raleigh called Wendell, um, they were short on their down payment. So
Yeah.
Sean sold his sneaker collection.
Oh gosh.
And I don't remember how big the collection was, but I know it was worth tens of thousands of dollars.
Isn't it something? I just
Yeah.
like, I remember like PF Flyers, and and if you had one pair of sneakers, you were lucky. Now, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
so
PF Flyers, I remember those in Converse, which are still
yep,
made.
yep.
And one of the many bullets I dodged in my life is that my sons both played basketball
Oh,
at the
okay.
point at which you could still buy a pair of sneakers for 20 or $25. And after
Yeah,
that, it was over.
yeah, for
And
sure.
I just don't get that. And as a complete aside, I think I read that Michael Jordan was severing his relationship with Nike or something like that. What in the
Oh,
world are they going
really?
to do without that guy?
I don't know.
Right?
He's probably going to go into competition and manufacture sneakers or something.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised. Speaking of enterprising.
I think the profit margin is significant, so.
So I do know at one point you were at PwC. How long after Dun and Bradstreet was that, and how did that come about?
Oh gosh. I Dun and Bradstreet decided to close down a business called Interactive Data. That's who I worked for. And they were going to move everybody back to Lexington, Massachusetts, which I was not interested in doing. And so I started working for a small security software company in Rocky Hill, Connecticut called Mergent
Ah,
International. And I covered all the New York banks, Morgan Stanley and Chase and everybody. And so along the way, I was doing a presentation at Digital, which a lot of your listeners probably don't even remember. But I was at Digital, and there were a couple of PwC partners in the room while me and my sales engineer were talking about this security software. And after the meeting, one of the gentlemen said to me, I'd really be interested in talking to you because I like the way you sell. And
hmm.
we need an insurance salesperson within what Price Waterhouse at the time. It's changed names about a zillion times. So so I started talking to Bernie, and sure enough, I landed myself as the only insurance salesperson at Price Waterhouse, and from there I was able to grow a team of people, and then I ran sales for financial services for all of Price Waterhouse, and then it became Price Waterhouse Coopers, and it goes on from there. So.
As the only salesperson, or sorry, insurance salesperson there, you must have been pretty valuable.
Well, a lot of the partners were skeptical about having a salesperson because they saw it as their responsibility. However, every time a partner would sell a job, he had to deliver a job, which meant he wasn't selling for the duration of the engagement.
Ooh,
And
good
so
point.
then they'd finish the job and then they'd be sitting there going, oh, we have nothing to do now. We're not billable, which, in professional services is everything. And so they decided that maybe they needed a salesperson to try to level out that instead of doing this when it came to revenue. And then it caught on. So, and then I hired a lot of great people and we had a blast. I mean, it was just a great opportunity to be exposed to the biggest companies in the
Mm.
world. And that's how I got my bug for financial services and kept that consistent my entire career.
I'm gonna come back to your career in a moment because I want to find out how and why and when you moved on from PwC. But I want to ask you if you remember something. Um, do you remember that we bumped into each other on a train in 1995?
I do. I think it was at the Stanford station, if I recall.
It could be, but I remember it was December of 1995, and I
Oh,
know
you
that.
remember the season. Okay, good.
Well, I know it because I still have my ticket stub from the Letterman show, which is where I was headed. And I was headed there because there's a guy named Bruce Corsino that I went to high school with who's completely out of his mind. And he has a PhD in psychology, which I think is redundant. But he sent me a letter, like a handwritten letter, and said he was going to be in New York City and said that he had tickets and would I like to go? The very next day, my phone rings and Bruce has got a very deep voice. He goes, Mark, this is Bruce. I said, yes, Bruce, I know who it is. And he goes, are you going? I said, I just got your letter yesterday. Okay, are you going? I said, yeah, I'll go. So two things I remember about that show. One is one of his guests was Martin Short, and
Oh,
I
neat.
just love Martin Short.
I do too.
And the musical guest that night, and I had no idea who it was or how enormous the act would become, was the Dave Matthews Band.
Oh my word.
Yep.
You
Yeah,
lucked out.
unbelievable.
You lucked out.
Yeah, well, that's the story of my life, actually. So after PwC, what happened?
Oh gosh. So the partner that ran the global banking practice had moved on to Bearing Point, which was an offshoot of KPMG.
Hmm.
It was the consulting offshoot, and he was running all of financial services. So he called me and said, "Hey, get over here. I need your help." And at that point, PwC had been acquired by IBM, and I had been there about 2 months. And frankly, I had enough, and so I was open to the conversation, and I ended up going over and working with Kris Bryant as the global head of financial services sales, and I was able to bring my team over and add a bunch of folks to the mix, and we had a really successful run until unfortunately the company went bankrupt about I was there a good 7 years. So
Don't you hate it when that happens?
yeah, because we were still doing like $300 million a year, even going through bankruptcy, so
Wow.
just in financial services. So, we had a good run. We worked really hard, and all of those folks are still my very best buds.
It occurred to me when you said digital earlier, and you weren't sure if some of our listeners would remember that. My guess is that if they know what curb feelers are, they probably remember digital.
Maybe, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
possibly. Um,
That's right.
so you said you moved on after 2 months at
Yeah.
one point, and I think, I hope, we've gotten over this. But at one time, people who, at least by the evidence on their resumes, moved around too much were considered to be job hoppers. I always loved that phrase. And so we're seen as, I don't know what, unreliable or untrustworthy or something. But I'm guessing that if you were invited to do that and were able to bring your whole team with you, that probably didn't affect you very much.
No, I mean I've done a lot of things, but I've been in the business for gosh, 45 years, and And I see a lot of my roles as like consulting assignments, like, Kris, come fix this. It's really broken. So you go, you fix it, and I'm a builder of sorts, so I really enjoy that phase. But after a while, it's not as intellectually challenging as it had been, and it's time to go fix another problem. So
Interesting. I don't know if I should share this here. My guess is you probably know it, but you're now with a company called Rhodian Group, which is a
yeah.
client of mine. But I had been talking to Phil Smith, the CEO, for a while, and then he just kind of went dark. And I reached out to him at one point. This was actually after you let me know that you were there, and he said, "Oh yeah," he said, "I've actually been after Kris for quite some time." So whenever somebody says fixer, I think of what was his name, Mr. Wolf in Pulp Fiction, Harvey Keitel's character, the fixer. But I would imagine that if you have that reputation as somebody who can build teams and fix things,
Yeah.
that's got to be pretty valuable.
Yeah, that's what I say. Like in job interviews, they say, "Well, how would someone describe you?" And I'm like they would say, "I'm a builder, a fixer, a nurturer, and I build great teams because I can see talent or I can help develop talent, either way."
We're going to go to break in a minute, but I want to share this with you. I happened to see something over the weekend about a gentleman. I can't even remember or imagine why I remember his name. His name was Mark Giuliano. And at one point he had been assistant director of the FBI, because he'd been with the Bureau for a long time. And then when he retired, he became head of security for some company in Atlanta. I don't remember the name of it. And for some reason, I decided to read the thread that followed the announcement of this gentleman's passing. And I read somebody who had been one of his colleagues said of Mark Giuliano, he was never outworked and he was always curious. And I wrote to that guy and I said, I don't know Mark Giuliano. You and I have never met. But if somebody ever says of me that I was never outworked and I was always curious, I will have lived the life I aspire to.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yep.
And believe it or not, of all people, Fidel Castro once said, the key to aging is remaining relevant.
I subscribe.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So on that note, we will take our first commercial break. We will be back in 3 minutes. And as Sal Marciano, ex-ESPN, loved to say, keep it where it is.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told. And the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
Ever wonder what it's like to have your own radio show? Well, wonder no longer, because you can dip into the radio airwaves by being host for the day on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network. It's a fabulous way to get your radio feet wet. It's an opportunity to market your business, modality, or book. Have a guest, mention a sponsor, and take callers. Or you may want to facilitate a lesson by going solo. It's up to you. Listeners can be online, mobile, in cars with Bluetooth, or listen through Amazon's Echo by asking, Alexa, play Dream Vision 7 Radio Network. For more details, go to dreamvision7radio.com and click on Host for the Day.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brands, distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com, or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back, Kris. Welcome back, everyone. Kris, I want to start this segment by asking you where you went to school, what you studied, and whether what you were doing in school and what you were studying transpired in any way that made logical sense based on those choices.
Well, I told you I graduated from Westbrook Senior High School, so there you go. 60 kids in my graduating class, 12 of whom we had all been together since kindergarten. So that tells you how small that town is, huh? And from there, I went to McGill University in Montreal, and I was there studying industrial relations, of all things, which was part of the business school. And I was there, it was a 4-year degree. I was only there for 2 because my mother became terminally ill and I had to come home, which I gladly did. And so from there, I had taken some of their classes along the way, but I never returned to college or university, and made my career on good old hard work. So
Wow.
industrial relations, yeah, definitely. I've used some of the negotiating skills and collective bargaining tactics along my career, certainly. And that's just part of big business. You have to be a negotiator, or you're going to fail.
First, I'm just really sorry to know that about your mom. Second, I sincerely hope that my son Sean doesn't listen to this program, because he left school after his junior year.
Oh boy.
And he is doing spectacularly well at Gallagher, the brokerage agency.
See?
So
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't hear this, because it'll give him yet another reason to believe his old man was wrong.
I know it's tough, but I made a way for myself, and maybe nowadays, like, you couldn't do that. Like, you have to have a degree. I really don't know, because I didn't need one to be able to make a solid, successful career.
Well, I think, and this is probably true of you too, I think in my son's case, he had managed to find enough working opportunities,
Yeah.
that he was able to prove himself. And I remember when he applied for the job at Gallagher, they said, well, we don't see a degree on your resume. And he said, no, you're not going to see that. But do you believe that I've done everything else that's on my resume? And they said, well, yeah. So they hired him. And, he's been doing progressively well ever since.
And he'll reach an age where it won't really matter anyway.
Well,
I mean, they're going to look at his experience and his know-how and his judgment, and that'll become more valuable.
I can tell you this only because I'm sitting down. Last October, he was 40. I think he's probably reached that point,
Yeah.
which it just doesn't matter anymore. How he got to be 40 while I remained so young is just a complete mystery to me. Maybe I'll figure that out someday.
I say the
Or
same
maybe I'll
thing
just go with
about
it.
my daughter. I'm like, I can't even believe you're 38 years old. How did that happen?
Yep.
So,
Quinn will be 38 in June.
yeah.
You may or may not be aware, granting that you grew up in Westbrook, that for 3 summers of my young life, my mom and dad rented a cottage in Chapman Beach.
Oh my word. Yeah, sure.
And those were absolutely, warning, shameless plug coming. Those were the 3 best summers of my life, and I've written about them in this book. Then I moved there. And so first question is, for somebody like me who considered going to Westbrook and Chapman Beach to be a vacation, what was it like to grow up there? I mean, if you're growing up in a beach community, you're not going to a beach community to get away from where you lived.
No, it's funny because we used to go to vacation at a lake called Long Lake in Naples, Maine,
Wow.
because living in Westbrook, it's like 2 sides of the coin. The summer, it's terrible because it's full of tourists and people that walk in the middle of the road instead of using the sidewalks because they think they're in the country, and the beaches are relatively crowded. I mean, most of Westbrook Beach, you either need a permit or you need to own property, So, but it just the population just explodes, from June on, and then about the end of September, they roll up the sidewalks and it's winter and it's lovely, and then you can go to the beach and walk the beach and it's very peaceful. And to this day, we still drive the hour from where we live in Connecticut down to Westbrook and walk on the beach in the winter in our parkas, because that's my favorite time in that part of the world.
I'll bet. And my next question was actually going to be about the difference between real life and summer, because I was completely unprepared for that when I moved down there. And I was a much more active cyclist then than I have been of late.
Yep.
And I can tell you that in the summer, you take your life in your hands. And you know what the biggest risk for me was? People towing boats, typically with pickup trucks or something, who know that they're going to pull into a gas station,
No.
but they're not going to let the guy on the bike go by him first. So they pull the truck in first, and they're not even mindful of the fact that the boat's still sticking out in the road. I can't even tell you how many boats I almost T-boned on my bike in the summertime.
Oh
It's
my
it's
gosh.
just nuts.
But there's really only 2 gas stations, Mark. So, how tough was it?
Well, I think you're right about that. I think you're right about that. I
See?
never thought about that. So all I would have had to do was change up my route. I would have been fine.
You would have been good. Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Yeah, but growing up at the beach is not a bad gig, I mean, it's a very pretty place and the people are lovely. And if you don't mind everyone knowing, absolutely everything that you're doing in your life at all times, it's a great place.
Yeah. For a while, I may have shared this with you. I don't remember. For a while, I was on the board of directors and then served as sort of interim executive director for Literacy Volunteers Valley Shore.
Oh,
And,
yeah, great.
and at the time, they were given their office space in the lower level of the library. But
I
those
know that
board-
library. Oh, the old library, like on the green library or the new
No,
library?
it must be the new one.
Okay.
Yeah, this was definitely not on the green. Up, I think, by the elementary school.
Yeah, yeah.
Those board meetings were absolute gossip fests because everybody knew everybody else.
Yeah.
And until I had lived there for a while, I kind of felt like a complete interloper. I don't know those people.
Well, there are families in Westbrook that have been there for like hundreds of years, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
There
it's
was
amazing.
there was a family that lived on Chapman Beach Road
Mhm.
named Spencer. And when
Oh,
we were
yeah.
going down there, did you know them? Old man, Spencer the lobsterman?
There's tons of Spencers in Westbrook. Yeah. And I went to school with a lot of them. Sure.
And actually, now that I think about that, a woman named Judy Henderson, this is a very long story, introduced my wife and me to each other. She was a
Oh,
Spencer.
you're kidding. Isn't that fun?
I should have connected those dots. And what's that road? Spencer Plains Road or something?
Spencer Plains Road. Yeah.
That's where she
Yeah.
grew up. Her family had a farm there.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, but this old man was a lobsterman. And actually my younger brother Keith used to go out with him a lot. And in the wintertime, he worked at the witch hazel plant in Essex.
Oh, yeah, sure. What was that called? Oh, Dickinson's, right?
Yep, that's right.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
I have another
There you
story
go.
about that, but this show's not about me. You said there were 60 kids in your graduating class.
Yeah.
There were about 360 in mine. And
Yeah.
I grew up in Meriden, which is a small town. In a small town like Westbrook, when you're an adolescent, how or where do you get in trouble?
Ever hear of Toby Hill?
I lived right off of Toby Hill.
Okay, well, everybody used to drive, either you would drive up Toby Hill and you could park and the cops never came to catch you doing whatever you were doing, or you'd go to the beach. You'd drive into the big beach parking lot.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
This is an absolutely trivial question, and we have to break again for another commercial in a moment. But do you have any idea why Toby Hill Road doesn't connect through to Ivoryton where it comes out?
I have no idea why.
I don't know. I always wondered because you go, you know this better than I do. You go up Toby Hill until it's not paved anymore.
It just stops. Yeah.
But it does come out the other end.
I don't know. Maybe somebody owns that property and they wouldn't sell it, you know? Maybe the Spencers own that property. You should do some research.
You know, you're right about that. I got to make a note.
Make a
I don't
note.
do anywhere near enough homework. You know that. All right. We will break again for 3, and then we'll be back to wrap it up. Please come back.
Thank you.
Are you ready for the quantum age?
Humanity's next step in evolution?
Dream Vision 7 Radio Network invites you to the extraordinary platform of evolutionary voices for the quantum age.
Let's explore. Learn more about this upcoming age where we bridge science with spirituality,
Where potentiality meets reality.
where we take compassion into action.
Our trailblazers and visionaries will ask the whys, the what ifs, while igniting continuous possibility.
Come along with us into an age beyond what we know today, where we can grow together in unity consciousness.
Experience evolutionary voices for the quantum age, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern on DreamVision7Radio.com.
You can't establish your brand's authority without a voice. That's why, since 2004, O'Brien Communications Group, OCG, has been helping companies establish their authority, find their brands, distinct voices, and position their brands effectively and persuasively. So effectively that 9 of OCG's clients have been acquired by other companies. OCG's business model emphasizes efficiency and results, not hourly billing, markups, and media commissions. That ensures OCG's advice is unbiased and its clients aren't at financial risk. If you're ready to find your voice and use it to tell your story, OCG is ready to help. You can find O'Brien Communications Group on the web at o'briencg.com. That's OBRIENCG.com, or call 860-944-9022.
Calling all authors. Have you been considering an audiobook? Well, look no further. Come take advantage of Dream Vision 7 Radio Network's unique in-house audiobook production, which includes benefits and bonuses from our radio station. Let our knowledgeable staff guide you to create the audiobook you've always dreamed of without breaking the bank. Check out our full one-stop service from A to Z, including the ACX process. Schedule a free consultation by calling 508-226-1723. That's 508-226-1723. Or go to dreamvision7radio.com.
Everybody has a story. Everyone's story deserves to be told, and the only bad stories are the ones we don't share. That's why Mark O'Brien created The Anxious Voyage. It's Mark's conviction that every story deserves to be shared, and his purpose is to give people in all walks of life from any circumstances a chance to tell their stories. The Anxious Voyage is now on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. Please tune in, please join Mark, and please share your stories.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy. Let life flow.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm guessing that anybody who's been with us today who's old enough to remember curb feelers might remember some infomercials or something that used to be on TV for somebody called Zamfir, Master of the Pan Flute. Do you remember that? No. I just wonder every time I hear that music from the last commercial, I wonder if that's who it is. First, I guess I want to ask you what you do recreationally, and I don't mean that to be a trick question. Recreationally, I write, and I write as much and as often as I can. That's what appeals to me. What appeals to you?
Two things. I cook. I find that really relaxing, and it kind of takes your mind to a different place than perhaps you are Monday to Friday. And I love to read around some body of water. Could be a kiddie pool, could be a lake. Those are the two things that really are relaxing to me. So, I'm
going to share this with you. You probably won't find it out of character at all. When Ann and I were married, our wedding ceremony was performed by a cousin of hers, who also happens to be kind of a World War II buff, as am I. So when we were on our honeymoon, we went to Lake George, and I remember sitting by the lake that her cousin, with a book that her cousin had lent to me, Adolf Hitler, The Psychopathic God. How's that for a little light reading?
That's great. You're so fun-loving,
That's right. I'm just a laugh a minute. If you had it to do in the ideal, what would you do?
Like for a living?
Or with your life? And just so you know, that's not a trick question. before I went to school, when I spent 10 years playing those things, if anybody asked me what I would do if I won the lotto, I always said exactly the same thing. First thing I would do is buy enough studio time to go record all the music that was floating around in my head. And if it found a market, fine. And if the market judged it to be garbage, that would be fine too. And I would just move on. And I've obviously evolved from there. So I just wonder if you had it to
All
do in the
right.
ideal.
So if I won $1 million, I would go to culinary school and learn how to do some things perhaps differently than I do them now. Um, I could use some education on different kinds of peppers. I don't know the difference from one to another, and that could be dangerous to my family. And I could learn to perhaps properly use a knife or properly sharpen a knife. That would come in handy. So I guess that's what I would do if I didn't have to pay the bills or anything else.
Is if you were to win $1 million, is
Yeah,
that something you would consider doing now?
go to culinary school
Mhm.
now.
Yeah.
Probably not.
I'm never going to win $1 million. But knowing that there would be nothing really at stake, I actually think if I did that, I might go to law school.
Really?
Mhm. I fool
Well,
myself into thinking I would have made a heck of a prosecutor.
well, the world can use some good prosecutors, so
Yeah, I just have to tell you that by contract, I'm not allowed to discuss politics on this show. So don't crank me up.
I wasn't going in that direction, believe me.
Given that, um, would you have done anything in your life differently if you had it to do over again?
Gosh, no, I don't think so.
Oh,
It's just like, why have regrets about things? And who knows, like, how a different decision or a
yeah.
different opinion would lead you in the wrong place. Like, I feel like I'm in the right place. So,
Yeah,
I've
I feel
I've
exactly.
yeah. I
And
feel like I'm surrounded by people that, care about me. And, I met my best friend when we were 5. We've been together ever since. I've been
wow.
married to the same dude for 44 years. I mean, I just feel like I am in the right place. Some days, maybe not, but for the most
Well,
part, I just think I am where I am because of, all the bumps in the road, right?
yeah. And I also think I sometimes think in matters of moments or something. And I'll give you the most recent example I can think of. At the end of May, we will have been in this house for 2 years.
Yeah.
Um, I can't even tell you how many places we put bids on, including in Westbrook. And this was like, the height of the COVID bubble. We got outbid by ridiculous amounts of money every time.
Oh,
Um,
gosh.
but we had put a bid on a place in Old Weathersfield that was accepted. Completely separate from that, my wife Ann, who also does interior design and staging, had been contacted by a contractor who said, given what I do and given what you do, maybe we should try to work together.
Sure.
So she said, okay. And he said, would you like to meet? And she said, yes. And she said, where would you, she said, where would you like to meet? And he gave her the address of this house, which at the time Anne saw it was stripped to the studs.
Oh
Nothing,
my.
no walls, no doors, no windows, no nothing. How it came to be that way is a long story. She invited the contractor she met here to the inspection of the house in Old Weathersfield. And we found
Okay.
out during the inspection it was going to be a money pit.
Oh no.
So we decided we were going to withdraw our offer. We lived in South Windsor at the time. We couldn't go home because our house was being shown until 6 o'clock. We had the dog and the cat in the car with us. And first we just drove down to the cove in Weathersfield, and we were sitting there, and I said, we're going to get pinched for vagrancy or something if we're just sitting here in the car, because it was wintertime. So she said, well, how about we'll just take a ride to Middletown and I'll show you the place I looked at with Alan, the contractor. So we had to drive by because the road ran on the other side of the street. We went to another community down the street, turned around and came back. As we were coming back, Alan and the guy who owned this property were pulling into the driveway.
Oh my word.
So Ann said, why don't we pull in? So the garage, and I'm on the second floor of the garage, had been previously detached, but they were in the process of building a breezeway. So to get in, we had to go into the garage, climb a step ladder, and across the plywood that was all there was of the breezeway. And we said to the guy who owned the place, we know this is nowhere near ready to go on the market, but when it goes on, what do you want for it? And what he told us was exactly what we had bid on the money pit in Old Weathersfield.
Oh
So we
my
said,
goodness.
tell you what, we'll take it if you'll let Ann design it. And he said, fine. But minutes, if we were a minute
It's called
earlier.
Divine Providence, DP. Friend of mine taught me that.
DP, I'm going to make a note of that.
DP, Divine Providence.
See,
Things happen.
because when my sons were growing up, they were wrestling fans. When I hear DP, I always think of DDP, who's Diamond Dallas Page.
No,
He was
it's different than that.
Yeah, he was a professional wrestler. And I also believe, had anything been different, or had I done anything different, I might be different. And I wouldn't choose that either. I've said in every decade since my 30s, I'm happier now than I was in the decade before. And it still remains true. Is that true of you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Some of the decades are tougher than others, but
Well, yeah, it's life.
I just feel like if things had been different, to your point, I would be different. Other people would be different, because I think we're here for a reason, like to help other people, and maybe I wouldn't have had a chance to do that.
Yeah, and it's a cliche that the only way past something is through it. And to your point about regret, I wouldn't take back any of the challenges or difficulties that I had in my life. I don't mean to suggest I would volunteer to do them over again,
No.
but I wouldn't take them back. And people always say to me, well, don't you wish you were younger? No, I wouldn't want to be that stupid again. Really?
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's easy to be younger, I mean, the world keeps changing and evolving, and it was hard enough, right?
I know you have a granddaughter,
I do.
and bearing in mind that we're going to stay on this side of politics, do you worry about the world she's growing up in?
No, because she's being raised to be a strong woman. And no matter what is going on around her, even though she's only 9 years old, I know she'll hold her own. So um,
Wow.
she's a good kid, and she's got a good heart, but she won't put up with any crap. So I like that about her.
You know what? I am so glad you said that, because one of my granddaughters is 9, and she is just like that. Her name is Maya, and you got to get up pretty early in the morning to get anything by Maya. Conversely, her older brother Evan, and my son Sean describes Evan this way, says he has a pure heart. And if one of the two of them is ever going to be taken advantage of, it's going to be Evan. And that's tough, because
Yeah.
they're both brilliant.
Of course, they're your grandchildren.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. Um, I don't know if I'd say it if I didn't believe it. I mean, I'd love them anyway, but I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would say that. Sorry, I'll tell you one quick story about Evan. We were playing a card game. That's all you need to know. Remember concentration? You'd put all the cards
Oh,
face
yeah,
down.
yeah. Yep.
Okay. So it just so happened we were playing with a set of cards that had 62 pairs in it.
Oh,
And
wow.
when we got finished, because there's 31 teams in the NHL and they were from the NHL. So when we got finished, Evan had 24 pairs of cards and I had 7. So we were sitting across the table from each other, and Anne was to my right and she had some markers. So I said, buddy, listen to me. When you go to school on Monday, please do not tell your friends that your grandfather is pitiful. His face lit up. He came around, grabbed a piece of paper, came around and grabbed the marker and came up next to me. And he wrote, Evan, 24, Grandpa pitiful. And laughed his butt off. So I said to him, knowing that he has a pure heart, I said, you know what, buddy, you're going to be all right. I mean, if you know enough to kid me at this age, you're going to be just fine. So maybe I'll turn out to be wrong. We're gonna have to call it because we need to be done at 58 minutes. Do you want to share? We might as well share where you work. You work at Rhodian Group. And is there any, should people try to contact you at all? Would you like to hear from anybody if they have questions about the show or anything?
Yeah, that would be fine. I love to talk to people. I talk for a living, remember?
Oh, that's right. That's right. I think you tried to sell me something one time. Joking. So, oh, you know what? I will share one more thing with you because this was a philosophical crisis for me.
Oh.
I was at a trade show and I went to the booth of one of my clients and he goes, oh, come here. I want to introduce you to the guy in this booth over here. So he takes me over and he says, I want to introduce you to Mark O'Brien. He's the best salesman I've ever known. I was absolutely devastated. And I was in my hotel room that night and I couldn't sleep. And
oh my God.
I went back down to the booth the next day and I said to him, you remember you took me over there and the way you introduced me to that guy? And he said, yeah. And I said, what do you think? Like I'm a huckster or a snake oil salesman or something? He goes, oh, he said, I don't think you have any idea how contagious you are when you're enthusiastic about something. I thought, okay, that I can live with. But I don't want to sell used cars.
Okay. But sales is not a 4-letter word.
I know that. I know that. And I will
want you to know that
as my shining example. Thank you for that. And I thank you for being here today. This has been wonderful to catch up after all this time. I know we'll be speaking again because we're working together. But this has been quite different and quite special, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for asking me.
Okay, my pleasure. And for everyone else who's tuned in, I will be back live. Please don't take this as a threat. I will be back live Monday, the 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern. I thank Rachel, our producer, and hope to see you then. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into The Anxious Voyage, the program dedicated to sharing stories, helping people, and celebrating life. You can see and listen to The Anxious Voyage on syndicated Dream Vision 7 radio network every Monday at 1 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with live broadcast every first and third Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you have a story to tell, or if you know someone who does, please email the host, Mark O'Brien, at mark@o'briencg.com. In the meantime, please remember, the only bad stories are the ones we don't share.
This is Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, uniting mankind with universal love. Our shows are created from the heart, bringing each listener to a place of divine enlightenment. Breathe, relax, and enjoy.